I'm Mark Hanna. I'm chair of the NCTJ Media Law Examinations Board, and I'm here to talk about media law. The Examinations Board decides what trainee journalists need to know about law and decides what's in their exams. Media law is a broad term. It covers some law which was made particularly for journalists, but also covers broad areas of other law which apply to everybody, but which journalists in particular need to know about because they are publishers. And I'm going to talk about those major areas of law. If you're interested, then you need to read McNae's Essential Law for Journalists, a book which I co-author and which is published by the NCTJ and Oxford University Press. The latest edition is just out. One major area of law which journalists need to know about is defamation. And when I was a reporter, this was one of the areas of law I was always concerned about. I worked for 4 regional newspapers and for a national newspaper for a time. And defamation law affects everything that is published. As the name suggests, the law is there to protect people from being unjustifiably defamed. That is, this is the law that protects people's reputations. So if a journalist is going to publish that someone is a cheat or a liar, they need a defense, because if that is published and there is no defense in defamation law, the person they've called a cheat or a liar is going to sue them successfully for a large amount of damages in the courts. One defense is being able to prove that what is published is true. And investigative journalists have to be very thorough. If they're going to allege dishonesty or some kind of negligence or wrongdoing being committed by a person or institution, they must have the evidence before they publish in order to prove that is true if they are going to rely on the truth defense. But there are some other defenses which allow journalists to publish matters when the publisher or the journalist is not sure whether they are true or not. For example, when publishing what is said in court cases or in council meetings or in Parliament, journalists cannot possibly be expected to know if the allegations are true or not. So there is a defense called privilege, which means as long as the report is fair and accurate as regards what was said in the court case or in Parliament or in the council meeting, the journalist, the publisher, cannot be successfully sued, because it's necessary for democracy for court cases, council meetings and Parliament to be reported. Another area of law is privacy, and that has been developing very fast over recent years. For example, the law now is that if someone who is married is having an affair, then that's his or her own business. And usually for the media to publish the fact of the affair would breach that person's privacy. That's a simplification of the law, but journalists have to be very wary now of the law of privacy. If a politician, for example, is having an affair and that politician has in the past made a big deal of the fact that he is married, allegedly happily. For example, if he and his wife or partner have been on an election leaflet projecting an image of a married man in order to gain votes, then yes, if that person has been having an affair, it may be justifiable for the media to tell the public about that, because the politician has projected a false image. But every case is different, and the law of privacy is something which journalists have increasingly needed to be wary about. But privacy law doesn't just protect politicians or celebrities, it protects everyone. For example, there are judgment calls to be made when journalists are covering major incidents such as accidents or terrorist incidents. Should a picture be shown of someone in distress, injured? Should their face be shown when they are in distress? So news editors, journalists have to decide what images are published. Would they intrude into someone's privacy to show them in pain and distress after such an incident? The bigger the incident is, the more justification there is really for showing the public how terrible it was. And that may mean, when covering terrorist incidents, that people's faces are shown when they're injured, whereas if it was a road accident, which sadly is more normal, then it would not be justified in showing their face. So these are judgment calls the media have to make. Another big area of law is that of contempt of court. This is law which protects the dignity and authority of courts, but its main purpose is to safeguard the fairness of trials. So if someone is arrested, say after a murder, the media doesn't know at that point whether that person is guilty of the offence or not. They must be presumed innocent in law until there is a trial. So after someone is arrested, then the media must not publish too much detail about the crime. They must not publish if the arrested person has any previous criminal convictions, because if that person is charged with the murder, the jury in the murder trial will probably not be told if they have previous convictions, because the jury is meant to decide the case on the evidence of the murder alone, not what the person's background is. So these laws kick in to protect that person's right to a fair trial. And when the case is passing through the courts, other laws come into play, again, to protect the fairness of the trial process. So in a preliminary hearing, evidence may be aired, but the media cannot report the evidence at that point because it's been said in court, yes, but it's not been said to the jury. And who knows when the trial begins what evidence will be presented to the jury. So the preliminary hearing may air evidence that the jury should not hear about, and that means the press cannot publish a full report of a preliminary hearing until the trial ends. Usually the trial itself can be reported in full. Another major area of law is copyright. If you see a picture on a website, does that mean, because you can see it and all the public can see it, that you can copy it and use it in a magazine or a newspaper article or in a TV broadcast? And the answer is maybe, and maybe not. Just because it's been published to the whole public doesn't mean there is a right for you to copy it. Whoever created that photo is probably the copyright owner. Usually, the law prevents you copying that photo, even to reproduce in an important news article without the copyright owner's permission. So don't think that you can copy images from the internet just because everyone can see them and safely publish them yourself. You're probably breaking copyright law. Again, there are some defenses, and these are the things which journalists need to know about. So I've described some of the major areas of law. There are others. I hope that the law doesn't sound too intimidating or difficult, because there are some basic fundamental principles, and once you understand those, it becomes easier to understand all the detail. Usually people studying media law enjoy it because it covers, as I hope I have outlined, all kinds of areas of human life, and it is interesting to see what the law allows journalists to do and what it doesn't. Remember, too, that the law gives journalists some rights to get information and to publish. So the law isn't just prohibiting journalists from doing things, sometimes it's empowering them. For example, fairly recently, the law changed to allow journalists to use their mobile phones in court cases to tweet reports of the case, as long as the phone is silent when they're tweeting. So they can sit on the press bench and use the phone to report almost live what is being said in court, and those reports appear on Twitter. They no longer need a judge's permission to do that. It's regarded as important for open justice the journalists can tweet from court cases, but the public can't use their phones in court. It risks being too disruptive if they are using them in the public gallery and they're going off and ringing when people are giving sensitive evidence. That would disrupt the evidence and upset the witness. The journalists, if they're responsible in how they use their phones, can use them in court to tweet reports. So there's a special right there for journalists. And there's some other special rights in law, and there's some other rights which all the public have to publish information or get access to it, which journalists know more about than most of the public. So law is a fascinating topic, and I hope that I have stimulated your interest. And if you want to know more, then you can buy McNae's Essential Law for Journalists and read more about it.